Okay, everybody, thank you for coming to the Beauty of Imperfect workshop. So the origin of this workshop comes from years of interacting with other humans. First as a teacher, and especially several years ago when I was a teacher of the gifted and talented, this was literally a weekly theme that I would be addressing with parents, where they would come to me and say, you know, my son or my daughter is paralyzed. They have perfectionism, and it's kind of preventing them from realizing their full potential. And so in the beginning, I didn't have an answer. So this situation that kept repeating itself, I mean, literally like once a week I'd have parents. I think Friday mornings were kind of like my parent conference day. And so I would have parents in there every Friday morning, and this pattern started to emerge. So that's when I started. This was maybe 10 years ago. That's when I started to dig into the research on perfectionism from an educational context, and found some answers, found some directions I could point parents in to kind of coach kids and do it myself in the classroom as well. But then over the last 10 years, after leaving the classroom 7 years ago, working in kind of a creative entrepreneurial environment with many different types of people, other teachers, other entrepreneurs, I saw that this is a very, very widespread issue. And for me, perfectionism is not a binary. It's not like I'm a perfectionist or I'm not. We're all somewhere on this continuum, and it's just a matter of how much are we preventing ourselves from kind of a full expression. For me, that's what this is really about, is embracing enough uncertainty, reframing any fixation you might have on this concept of perfect so that you can perform and kind of express. That's really what it's about, okay? So the goal today is you're gonna walk away with 4 separate tools. You'll get other beautiful nuggets and tidbits, but you're gonna get 4 distinct tools that you'll walk away with that I hope will bring some value, right? In addition, we have this workbook. We don't wanna use our time doing the workbook during the session, but everything in the workbook are things that we'll discuss here. What I'm really encouraging you to do is use the workbook as kind of like a post-processing to go deeper and to get really personal, okay? All right, so excellent. So here we are. So I want to put this in some context, okay? So this concept of embracing the imperfect is an ancient idea. Almost every wisdom tradition, every ancient culture you look at has this trope. And so we're kind of in really good company here. We're not going to get really anthropological or esoteric or, you know, international studies about it. We're going to get kind of very pragmatic. But just, I want to put this in context. So there's this Japanese concept of wabi-sabi. I love that. You see the little aside? Not to be confused with wasabi. Man, wasabi sauce is deep, man. Okay. So it's this thread in Japanese culture that, you know, embracing the discovery of beauty in the imperfection and accepting it, right? That it's actually part of the path. Other nuggets that I found. So there's kind of like this known concept of the Persian flaw. Have you heard of the Persian flaw? It's this concept in Persian culture in particular that when you're an artisan and you're creating something beautiful, such as a Persian rug, you intentionally leave a flaw in it as a way of acknowledging that, like, I'm human, I'm imperfect. You know, in that context, what you're inferring is only God is perfect, so I'm not trying to compete with God. But I found this other nugget from Navajo culture, okay? Navajo rugs are also very well known around the world, right, as beautiful artisanal creations. And Navajo rug weavers leave an intentional line in a corner of their rug called the spirit line. And it's this similar concept of intentionally leaving an imperfection as a way to sort of reflect kind of this beautiful imperfection that is embodied in the world, right? The spirit line. And there's actually a beautiful Navajo name for the spirit line that I don't want to try to pronounce, but you can look it up. It's a really cool concept. Okay, so now getting a little bit more 2020 into the modern context. So this is an article from the BBC from a couple years ago that's kind of like really calling out this growing, burgeoning trend towards perfectionism in cultures around the world. Okay, so we're not gonna get super academic about it. You can go look this up and see the background studies. But I bring it here just to bring this into relief of like what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay, there are some serious consequences to this trend. So what this study did is or what this article did was it looked at some studies that identified what they called a major increase in perfectionism from 1989 was like their base point, okay, to 2016 was the end point of that particular study. And they outline here the actual metrics that they looked at and things, but the point is, across the world, across cultures, there's a massive increase in this tendency towards perfectionism. And you might say, like, what's the big deal? What's the problem? Well, that's the problem. You can see all of the potential health effects to this way of thinking, right? There's a little bit of a debate in kind of the community, in the health community, in the mental health community, about is there such a thing as adaptive perfectionism? In other words, well, sometimes it's good. So when you go look at the articles, you'll see kind of this back and forth, but the majority right now are kind of like in this school that like there's not really such a thing as a good perfectionism. And that's what I'm here to kind of frame for you today, is that I don't want to throw out this idea that it's not good to care about things, that it's not good to care about quality. Because what I'm going to do today is show you just a different way to frame it. This impulse that you might have to be perfect, that's fine. There's nothing actually wrong with the impulse. It's how you place it and how you focus it. And if we can shift that to this concept of excellence, lots of things can transform for you. So that's the idea, okay? And not to get too dark, but since, my background is in education, and so we kind of have our pulse on global education around the world and higher education and things like this, and this is the one that scares me the most, is the suicide rate, the growing suicide rate in certain places in the world, especially among our adolescents who are sort of growing up in this culture of high achievement, high performance, fueled by this feedback loop of perfectionism and perceived perfectionism and what they need to do to perform and be accepted, and how it's fueling health issues, including suicide itself. So this is where it gets a little bit really serious for me, and this is more than just kind of like a fluffy light talk to arm you with some light tools. This is like some serious stuff. Okay, now just for a minute, because one of the things that I've realized over these last few years is I'm kind of making a transition from the educational world into kind of more of the general world of self-development. One thing I'm seeing is that there are some golden nuggets in the educational research that the greater world is not benefiting from, okay? And one of them is this concept from the research that perfectionism is not some kind of homogeneous, defined thing, that there are so many different types of perfectionism that manifest in different ways. I didn't even learn this until I had been teaching for 5 or 6 years. I was going to grad school. I was taking a class on the gifted and talented and their social emotional development, and we had an entire section devoted to the types of perfectionism. So a lot of us have this kind of like knee-jerk idea when we hear the word perfectionist, that it's like this obsessive corrector, and they're just like all about the quality and that final detail. And in the educational context, it's like the student up at your desk arguing, but Mr. Cook, why did I get a 96? And so that's this kind of concept we have of the perfectionist. But what's super interesting is there are tons of behaviors out there that are actually symptoms of perfectionism that on the surface look like the opposite. You might, on the outside, seem like a complete underachiever, like a super chill person. That could be a symptom of perfectionism. We're not going to go deep into all of these, but I just want to highlight what I'm talking about. So the academic achiever, this is sort of the traditional perfectionist that we think of, right? It's just like they're obsessed with the numbers, this extrinsic motivation. They're all about the grades, they're all about the pleasing the teachers, pleasing the parents, right? They're the academic achievers. So, and the aggravated accuracy assessors are kind of in the same category as those. They're the ones who are kind of obsessively correct, never quite done because there's one more thing they can fix, but they do eventually turn it in, okay? So that's why those first two are kind of in the same category. It's this obsession with achievement and results, okay? Now, these last three, however, kind of flip the stereotype quite a bit. So these are the ones that on the outside seem like underachievers, seem like slackers. They might seem lazy, but when you dig a little bit deeper, you find that they're just paralyzed by this sense of perfection, of needing to achieve perfection, okay? So for example, the risk evader. The risk evader makes this internal assessment that they're not going to do anything, they're not going to take any step towards anything that might show them or the world that they're not perfect at it. So instead what they'll do is they'll kind of tiptoe through life and do only things that they know are going to be like solids. Only solids, no risk. And just think about what a constrained life that is, right? When you're doing that. So these are fun. The controlling image managers. So in the educational context, these are the kids who kind of like paint a narrative around themselves to explain their underachievement. And it's kind of like this story, like this unlosable story. Because like they won't perform on a test, but they'll frame it like, if I just don't care. Like if I cared, I put forth a little bit of effort, I could do that. But it's just not important to me, forget about it, right? So that's how it manifests there. And then the procrastinators, these are the ones who they reach this kind of this cliff, and they make a decision where, okay, I could turn this in, and maybe it's not perfect, maybe get a low grade or something like that, or I could just not turn it in at all and never get that feedback. I think that's safer. I'll just never turn it in, right? So you go, these are the cases where the parent gets the note that there's 7 assignments missing for your child, and you're like, what? What's happening here, right? And then when you dig a little bit, there's this paralysis. So what I want to do here, the reason I pause for a moment on this slide and these concepts is I want to extrapolate that into the adult world, into this world, this messy world that we're operating in. Just want you to ask yourself, are any of these symptoms things that you see in yourself and your loved ones? Because what we're going to talk about today, these tools can address all of these in some way, okay? And like I said, it's not a binary where we're either perfectionist or not. We're all somewhere on this spectrum of kind of like not taking enough risk. And so understanding kind of where you might be on this continuum as well could be helpful when you look at the tools. Okay. Any comments or questions on those?
Would you say that risk evaders is a synonym for imposter syndrome?
Oh, great question. Yeah, so I'm going to repeat the question for the benefit of our webinar participants. So the question was, are risk evaders the same category as the imposter syndrome? So first let me one step back and just kind of define imposter syndrome, okay? So there's this concept where, especially it's really rampant among gifted students in particular, but not exclusively, where once you get a certain label or a certain expectation put upon you, okay, like, so I'm labeled the GT kid. So I get this idea in my head that, okay, so I've got this label that I've got to live up to all the time, when in reality, all the research shows us really clearly that that's not even what giftedness means. It doesn't mean you perform at everything. It's really domain specific, okay? And so this concept of imposter syndrome is, you walk around like your life is under this cloud of, oh my gosh, if the world only knew what I really am, they'd know what a fake I am. So it's an imposter syndrome, and we all get it. Like I have to go give an important presentation at work. I'm going to be teaching this class, whatever. If they only knew that I'm not really such an expert, they would find me out. So to go back to your question, I think yes. So what will the imposter do? The imposter, they will avoid and evade risk as much as possible because they don't want to be revealed. They don't want to be outed in their mind, right? So yeah, very, very poignant point. Okay, so that's just kind of our intro, setting the framework. Let's start digging in here. I got some cool stuff I want to share. So part 1 is all about the power of perspective, in which we explore how a cognitive reframe can transform and shift our relationship to the concept of perfection. So just a little heads up. What's going to happen is we're going to start like really big view, as in cosmological level, and then we're going to zoom in, okay? Because this is how I am. Like I love the big philosophical stuff, but we'll zoom into the pragmatic too. Okay, so I want to show you a photo. Some of you might be familiar with this. It's a famous photo called the pale blue dot. It was taken by the Voyager 1 back in 1990. It had kind of finished all its work in nearby space in our solar system. And the cosmologist / scientist / philosopher Carl Sagan had made a special request to NASA, like, hey, before it leaves and gets too far, can you please have the Voyager 1 turn around and snap a photo of Earth? And so it did, all right? And can anyone see it from where you're seated? If you've seen the photo, you might know. It's actually this pale blue dot. And you can't see it very well in the resolution of this one, but there's like kind of a beam of light. And it's almost like this little, Carl Sagan calls it just like a little dust mote, right? And so this photo, believe it or not, the power of a photo, we take it for granted because we see all these Hubble shots all the time. Oh, look, a nebula, right? But back then, this was kind of like a perspective shift. This was like a mind blow moment. So here's how Carl Sagan actually wrote a book about it called The Pale Blue Dot. And this is how he saw it should kind of reframe our perspective, right? So look again at that dot. That's here, that's home, that's us. Everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you've ever heard of, every human being who ever existed lived out their lives on that tiny blue dot, right? Every idea, concept, philosophy, religion, important book, music, arts, every single thing that's ever existed is just on that teeny, teeny little blue dot, right? And it's going to get even smaller as the Voyager 1 keeps going, right? And if you've seen nowadays, they have these cool like little animations that show, that's like start on Earth. Like I saw one a couple of weeks ago that like started on Tibet actually, and kind of zoomed out. And so you get out of our solar system, you get up to the edge of our galaxy, and then our galaxy gets small and just is just another galaxy. And then that cluster of galaxies is just another cluster of galaxies. And so it's just an opportunity to just take a moment, look around at these like little things, these little voices in your head and these problems that are kind of nagging at you, and just like, oh, wow. I'm standing on just this rock in the middle of space. It's literally just a pale blue dot. Doesn't mean I'm not important or that what I do is not important, but it's just one of those perspectives, the spatial perspective, right? So that's kind of like a reshift number one, reframe number one is spatially. Just think about the context of where we are physically, okay? And I'm going to tie that together with some other just like kind of like cognitive reframes, okay? So this is, I'm sure you've seen these things, similar things before. There's like the 24-hour clock. This is one that just shows like a year, okay? Origin of our galaxy is January 1st, or origin of our universe. Origin of our galaxy is like late January, right? In this context, you know, human beings have just appeared in the last 10 minutes of the year. Like literally, barely before the New York Times ball drops, humans appear. That's how like tiny and little we are in the context of the universe, right? So the pale blue dot is kind of like spatially putting us in context. This is temporally putting us in context, okay? And then what I want to do is kind of zoom in, and I pulled this from Alice in Wonderland, obviously, just to kind of like the silly contrast. You're late for an important date, really? Could it be that important? You're just a tiny speck on the calendar. Okay, so this is not a shock to anybody about the average human lifespan. We're kind of lucky these days if we live 100 years, and if all those 100 years are in health and cognitive clarity, you're even more lucky. In other words, you know, I know people are working on it, and the singularity is coming supposedly, where we're gonna transport our consciousness into machines. We'll see. But in the meantime, when we're in these human bodies, it's very finite and limited, right? And there's a tool that actually comes from, you know, a Tibetan meditation practice, a mental visualization that has helped me a lot. So that's what I'm going to kind of share with you guys now. I don't know the official name for it, but I call it 100 years if you're lucky. So the way it works is, I want you to think for a moment about every human being that you've encountered today in any way, okay? From the moment you woke up this morning until this moment looking at me, think about every human being that you've encountered. It could be even like via text, you watched a YouTube video, in this room, your family, any contacts you've made, okay? Now, extend that out, any human being that you've encountered in the last year of your life. Like literally any encounter with any human being or living being over the last year of your life. Okay? Now, go back to your birth. Just kind of like go ahead and sweep all the way back to your birth. Any encounter you've ever had with any human being. Okay? Now I want you to think about this. Now, intellectually, I know you're going to understand it. You're gonna go like, yeah. But what I want you to do is kind of let it come down here. And I want you to feel it viscerally, because it can shift. Now, I want you to project, just with your imagination, 100, or just to be safe, let's say 125 years into the future. Every single human being, or being, with the exception of maybe some tortoises and some parrots, every living being who you just went through that exercise with will be off the face of the planet, no longer in existence. Every single living person in your life now, who you have to please, who depends on you, who relies on you, who you interact with, who you're in love with, will be gone from the planet. Okay? Let it settle down. Okay. Let it settle for a second. Every single living being that you've ever encountered will be gone in 125 years. Okay? Then you kind of zoom back in and you try to reframe. Okay, so how can that inform what's important to me today? Okay? What's important to me today? Should I obsess about how big the logo is on my presentation this morning? Probably not, right? Should I be that worried about some perceived little slight from someone at the office at work? Probably not. What's going to matter, right? We know that physical stuff erodes, there's entropy, right? So physical stuff that we contribute to the world can have a temporary impact. But this is where it kind of comes down, the rubber meets the road, and it comes down to like maybe your spiritual beliefs or what your philosophical beliefs are about what you leave behind. But really what it forces you to think about is, what is the best way that you can impact on this really, really limited time that you have on planet Earth, right? Okay, thanks for coming on that little trip with me. I promise we're gonna zoom down. So for me, those two mental exercises of pale blue dot, 100 years at best, are kind of like the reframes, right? Like, oh no, I'm dizzy. So for me, the answer, and this relates directly to one of the first slides we looked at, is the only thing we have is like right now, present moment. That's all you can really come back to is present moment. And so this, I know that mindfulness is like trendy, and meditation is trendy and more widely accepted, and it's just kind of like the word is kind of thrown around, but really, the ability to come down to the present moment can be a panacea, can be like a cure-all for so many things, including perfectionism. Because if you're in the grip of this sense of inadequacy, and you kind of realize, reshift and come down to this moment, it's just like, okay, it's actually really simple. It's me and my breath right here. And that's why almost every wisdom tradition that has meditation practices is all based on the breath, because that's the one constant that if you're alive, you can find your breath. If you can't find your breath, it means you're dead anyway, right? It's silly to say, but it's true. So what I'm going to do is, for you and for the benefit of those on the webinar, is just give one particular practice that's very, very simple. It requires no beliefs. It requires no spirituality. And I know we have some yogis and meditators right here. You've got your own massive toolbox of practices, I know. But this is one that's really easy to do with anyone. So a couple of you here have seen me do the 4-4-7. This is just another variety called the 4-7-8. Okay? The idea here is 4, 7, and 8 stand for seconds. And we're going to do a little bit of counting and breathing. Okay? The basic concept here is that when you extend your exhale longer than your inhale, you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system. Remember all those health symptoms from one of the first slides that are symptoms of perfectionism, including anxiety, early mortality, all these things, right? That's because the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight, is triggered all the time, right? You're like, oh my God. Okay? So we can have this tool that on demand we can trigger our parasympathetic nervous system, and at least, if nothing else, come to the present moment. Okay? So I'm just going to guide you through it once. So we're going to inhale for 4. We're going to hold it for 7. And then this particular technique, the breath out is kind of like a, or you can go up. So it's actually like an audible breath out for this particular practice, okay? This particular one, by the way, in case you're curious, was developed by Andrew Whale. He's like a doctor out of Arizona who does kind of a lot of research on mindfulness and holistic approaches. Okay, so let's kind of get set. Inhale for 4. Hold for 7, just count in your head. You're ready, exhale for 8. See if you can do it 3 times. Okay, beautiful. So this is just one of thousands and thousands of meditation / mindfulness practices. If this particular one doesn't work for you, reach out to me and I'll give you 10 more. We actually have a couple meditation teachers right here in the room, in the house. They would give us some insight as well too. So you didn't know you were signing up for a meditation class or webinar, did you? So I got you. But it's so important. It's like the baseline, right? It's the baseline. For all this stuff, for perfectionism, whatever social emotional issue we're talking about, that's tool number 1, always. Come back to the present moment, come back to your body, come back to simple awareness. And then from there, we can start looking at the other tools. Okay, now, we're pretty good on time. Okay, part 2. I love it. Life is messy. Life is messy, in which we try to embrace chaos and entropy as a natural state of things and see it as a golden opportunity for beauty to unfold. So this is where I know a lot of us have challenge, because we're trained to see or to think that order is primary, and that out of order comes good things, and it can for sure, right? But I just want to take you on a little thought path for a moment. Oops. So a friend of mine in France, actually, she's like kind of one of my coaches. She posted this on her social media like just last week, and like, oh my gosh, I have a perfectionism talk coming up. Can I use this? And she's like, oh yeah, sure. So Jung, the psychologist, has this beautiful quote about chaos, right? That in all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order, which is beautiful. And she juxtaposed that quote with work by this artist named Rashad Alakbarov. And what he does is he takes these chaotic junk piles and concoctions, and when you flash light on them, they reveal a most beautiful secret order. This particular one, of course, just looks like a pile of sticks, but look at this geometrical pattern when you shine a light at it. So for me, it's such a beautiful metaphor for what we're talking about here. This is our life, and sometimes we're stuck in this part of it, this perception. We can't see the forest from the trees. When if we just realized, okay, if I can kind of step back, I'm missing the order. I can find the order here in the beauty. Okay? Here's just a couple. I couldn't help myself. I had to put a couple other examples. This one just looks like a junky kind of mural or mobile. Shine the light on it. Look at this beautiful kind of beach scene. This one kind of blows my mind. Another kind of pile of sticks. Look at that. You've got the hands, the classic hands touching each other. So for me, powerful metaphor about this next section, which is in the apparent chaos, there is such an opportunity for beauty to unfold. All right? So a couple years ago, I came across this book that really impacted me, right? It really impacted me. It's called Messy. Tim Harford is an economist, okay? And he felt that there was a little bit too much bias in the world today for like the orderly and the tidy. This was about the time when Marie Kondo's first book came out, which I love Marie Kondo, by the way. I've watched the whole Netflix series. It's cool. But at the same time, we have to be careful with that, because we can kind of set this ideal for ourselves about we have to live in this like super Spartan, extremely organized and ordered existence. And he's like, hold on a second, I've seen a lot of things in the world and throughout history where the key was actually the disorder and that beauty emerged from it, okay? A couple of examples. I can't help but tell these two anecdotes from the book, okay? So Keith Jarrett is a jazz pianist, and I'm seeing some nods, you're familiar with him, right? And I had never heard this story till I read the book, but it was awesome. So the year is 1975, okay? He's in Berlin, Germany to give a concert. The organizer of this particular concert was a 17-year-old German girl. She was a teenager, and she was an entrepreneur, and she had somehow gotten charge of this music hall, and she had arranged for Keith Jarrett to play. There were 1,400 tickets sold. The concert was that night. Keith Jarrett and like his agent arrive at the concert, at the building, right? They go in, they look at the piano, and it's a pile of junk. Like the piano is not adequate at all. This entrepreneur was not a musician. He didn't know what she was presenting to Keith Jarrett. And he's like, absolutely not. I'm not gonna play on this junk, right? And so, precocious artist or whatever. So he goes out to his car, it's raining that day according to the story, and he sits in his car, he tells his agent, like, wrap this up, let's get out of here, right? So Keith Jarrett goes and sits in the car in the rain, and out comes this entrepreneur, this 17-year-old girl. And she's like, please, Mr. Jarrett, just play. This is my big break. I can't let everybody down. There's 1,400 people coming. And he had just a glimmer of compassion. And he says, fine, don't forget this. I'll do this for you, but it's going to be a disaster. So they go, they call a piano tuner to come do the best they can with the piano. And the night comes, the place is packed. Keith Jarrett goes up to the piano. He hits the first few notes, and according to like eyewitnesses, like from the first measure, there was something magical and special about that particular concert. It was recorded live. That's what this concert is. It's called the Koch concert. What had happened was something, because of the crazy state of the piano, and because of his expertise as a musician, he had adapted to that very messy, imperfect moment in some ways that created something completely unique and beautiful. Example, the keys, in order to be heard in that music hall, he had to hammer them. He had to hammer the keys, and that gave a special quality to the sound that came out. He had to stay on certain portions of the register because certain pieces of the piano keyboard were just like unusable. And all these kind of factors contributed to this, what's not still to this day, the best-selling solo jazz recording of all time. Okay? And it was completely by accident. If he would have just surrendered to this sense of perfectionism and said, forget it, this isn't perfect, it's not adequate, I'm out. Instead, and it's interesting, like you can go find the recording, it's on Spotify. You can hear him grunting and complaining as he's playing. It's funny. Like, and if you look at photos of him at that concert, he's like standing up, like, like wanting and complaining, but little did he know he was creating a masterpiece that to this day people admire. Okay? One example of beauty coming from this mess, right? Another one, we all know MLK, right? And probably the most like goosebump-inducing speech of human history that I know of, which is the I Have a Dream speech, right? What I didn't know, really, and some of you may know this, is that piece of the speech was completely improvised, okay? So MLK in general was very, very, very organized, very focused on preparation. They say he spent about 15 hours a week just to prepare his sermon for Sunday. So extremely prepared. He took scrupulous notes, right? And just was really a perfectionist. So I didn't know this backstory. At the I Have a Dream speech, apparently the first part of the speech, he was bombing. Like he was not getting the fire reaction. It was not resonating. People were not like yes, right? And so he realized it at some moment. And because he had his notes and his script, and he realized it at some moment, and there was this pause. And they say, I don't remember who it was, but someone who knew him was sitting behind him, a woman, and she saw that he was like face planting that speech. So she's like, Martin, tell him about the dream. Because he had talked about this concept of having a dream at church or with friends or whatever. And then in that moment, he's like, I know what I have to do. And that's where the I Have a Dream piece came out extemporaneously. It was improvised, okay? So just another example, and this book is full of examples like this, of like the chaos, the imperfect circumstances. being willing to embrace them and kind of fall into them can lead to some extraordinary moments of beauty. Okay, so I couldn't help myself. There's this classic Onion article, right? Ritalin cures the next Picasso, right? Unfortunately, there's as a former teacher, there's a super dark side to that too, where you do see literally imagination and creativity like just getting muffled, getting smothered by this, what Ken Robinson calls a false epidemic of ADHD, right? But the point here is that in Messy, he digs into this and pokes at this a little bit, of this idea. It's like, well, where does creativity come from, right? And so these are just high level insights from the book that I want to share because they contribute to our story here today. So one study showed that distractible brains scored higher on creativity measures. In other words, on this continuum, those who were a little bit closer to ADHD scored higher in those creativity measures used in the study. This one fascinated me. The top scientists around the world, those Nobel Prize winning scientists, what do they have? What's one thing that they have that other scientists don't? Well, actually, it's this concept called a network of enterprises. They project hop. They topic and project hop all the time. We have this idea that hyper focus is the key, like drilling in and just hyper focusing until the problem's solved. That actually is not the most conducive to become a top scientist, global level scientist. There's another little detail to that I just know of from my research in STEAM, and is that Nobel Prize winning scientists have a tendency to also be accomplished artists in one or more disciplines, aside from being scientists. But it's kind of a similar concept, right? There's this cool concept called bonding social capital versus bridging social capital. And it's this idea that if you have a group of people trying to solve a problem, and you kind of lock them into a room in a hyper-focus mode, they're less likely to find a novel solution or an adequate solution or a breakthrough than if you keep it kind of loose. If you keep it as kind of more of a loose coalition, which is considered bridging social capital, which leads directly to this next one. In a situation where you have a group of people trying to tackle the problem, diversity always trumps stability. And the example that they give in the book is sometimes there's an economics problem, and they'll put the top 5 economists in the world get into a room to solve this problem. And they're stuck. You're more likely to find a breakthrough in the problem by inserting someone from a completely different discipline in the room with them than economist number 6 and 7 in the world. In other words, just adding more ability is less conducive to solutions and problem solving and creativity than diversity of thought and thinking. This mess, right? These sporadic, random connections that will happen and spark in that kind of setting. Does that make sense? Okay. And finally, improvisation, right? There's this trade-off when you decide to improvise. There's a risk, right? And so what he talks about here, he talks about Miles Davis and jazz musicians and improvisation in other contexts too, including in business and life, right? And there's some specific benefits that are the payoffs of taking the risk of improvising. So speed, economy, it's cheaper, you got flexibility, and then here's the enigmatic, sometimes the magic happens, right? Magic, okay? It's this balance, right? I wouldn't want to come to this presentation and completely improvise it, but at the same time, I don't want to stand here and read a script. I have to kind of feel your guys' questions and your concerns and read your body language and kind of adapt what I'm doing. And it's kind of this balance that we always have to do. Okay, now, this is kind of where my experience as a teacher meets my experience as an entrepreneur, and then it kind of all comes together into this moment of okay, self-development moment. Let's use these insights from these different fields to give you guys a tool. Okay, so I have to tell a little backstory here. So me and my co-founder of our company, NuMinds, Justin. So back when we started in 2013, we were a couple of really good teachers, really maverick teachers. We were creative, progressive, whatever. We had zero business experience. We knew not much at all about being entrepreneurs, marketing, accounting, any of it, right? So early on, we went to one of these local organizations that has free business classes and free business coaching, and we went to this one about how to create a business plan. We're like, yeah, we need a business plan, right? So we went and we got an appointment with these two guys, and they were two very old school business dudes, okay? We're talking like retired, they've been retired for decades, and they just volunteered and coached other business people, right? So we went and chatted with them, very nice guys, very insightful, very compassionate. They gave us some good general advice, and they're like, okay, well, ask us about our business, our plan and ideas, and they're like, okay, well, what the next step, the next thing you have to do is just complete your business plan. And here's the template, boom! This 90 to 100 page document that basically said everything we were gonna do for the next 10 years. And I thought, even back then, Justin and I looked at each other, we're like, that's not how this works, you know? In education, things change every 6 months. Like the new thing comes out. You have to be able to roll, you have to be able to pivot and adapt and change. And so about that sense, that got us frustrated. Of course, we started to tackle the business plan and like, wow, this sucks. It was not fun, right? To try to think about, well, in 7 years, what am I gonna be doing? I don't know. And, you know, we were trying to put on programs 7 days from now and stay afloat. But about that same time, I came across this book. It's called The Lean Startup, right? And it's this new mentality for this century, a different way to approach business, and I'm going to argue today, life. Okay, and it's this idea that we're building something, we're putting it out there, and we're getting feedback and data, and then we're learning from it, right? And the key concept here is in the build phase, you're not trying to build something perfect. That's the paralysis by analysis, right? And that's the old school business plan. Like you don't start until you got all your T's crossed and I's dotted for the next 10 years. That's kind of the old mentality, right? That there's like this perfect structure that you're building. This is the complete opposite. In fact, the term that you use for this build process is called the MVP, the minimally viable product. The idea here is get something out there that's just functional enough to be functional, let it interact, let it feel the real world, let it fail, get the feedback, learn, and then make it better. Or you have some choices here. In the learn stage, you have some choices. You can make it better, or you can pivot. That's really important, is you have to give yourself the space and the permission to pivot, okay? And, you know, it's tough, because if you have a perfectionist or fixed mindset, you have this idea that a pivot is like a flip-flop or a waffle, or you're being flaky. But this is how the business world has completely embraced this. Like it's just like a thing, like MVP is just a term you throw around, right? The lean startup model has been completely embraced. And so I'd argue that we regular humans need to catch up and see our lives in the context of a startup, right? If we're constantly kind of progressing and moving towards the goal, then we are a startup. We're an ongoing project. And this, this ties in perfectly to the whole concept of design thinking, okay? It's the same idea. Like you're ideating, you're prototyping, you're testing, you're implementing, and it's a cycle, it's a circle, right? Because you're not kind of on your way to this perfect thing. You're not on your way to this perfect thing. It's a cycle, it's a spiral, you might call it, where you're constantly improving, okay? And so this idea started to hatch, several years ago, that, wow, all these concepts from business and this research from education about growth mindset, which we'll get to in a second, it's like, oh my gosh, like people need to start seeing their lives as projects, as startups, and all these principles apply, okay? But then I found that, oh man, someone beat me to it, okay? So Stanford University has this class, 2 Stanford professors, Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, have developed this class for the juniors at Stanford called the Designing Your Life class. And that's precisely what they have done. They've taken concepts from design thinking and created, some of you may have read the book. Have any of you read the book? I think you have, Kathy, right? Yeah, okay. They take these concepts from design thinking and kind of present the opportunity for you to see your life as a design project, and you have to sort of embrace this mindset that your life is a project. It's project, not perfect, right? It's about a project, not about perfect, okay? So, but this is beautiful because what I'm going to offer you as tool number 2 is a workbook. It's not the full course, and it's not the book, but there's an organization that I belong to, and I go to their conferences called Hive, and they have adapted this Designing Your Life philosophy from that very course, and they have a workbook, and the full PDF is available online, but here in your workbook, you have the first several sections of that, and it's in the Life is Messy section of your workbook, and these are the first 5 prompts that they kind of walk you through to start framing your thinking. And the end result that you get is this purpose statement, where it's like your life purpose. Now, that changes, that evolves, so don't panic and think that you're going to do this exercise and then get locked into this thing that doesn't feel right. In fact, every 90 days you're supposed to look at it again and say, is this still right? Does it still feel right? And if not, then you tweak it, because why? Design thinking. That's why it's Design Your Life, right? So I have done this personally. It took me 3 times going through the Design Your Life process to feel like I'd gotten to like, oh yeah, this resonates, this feels right, okay? So I had to embrace that philosophy that it wasn't gonna be right the first time. So that's tool number 2. Part 3, mindset. So this is another jackpot from the education world that I feel is way too under-applied out here in the busy, messy world, right? Okay? So there's this concept that a lot of schools are adapting now called the power of yet, okay? It's like this magical, powerful one word that can be a mindset shift, okay? Let me give an example. So I want you to imagine that there's a line, a continuum, like this one, going across, okay? So we have this tendency as humans to kind of like think of ourselves, when it comes to any aptitude or skill set or ability in any particular domain, we kind of like see ourselves somewhere on this continuum and think like that's just where we are. That's just where we are. Instead of seeing that like we have complete control on how we can move along that continuum based on the effort that we put into it. That's the essence of mindset, okay? So for example, let's say I want to learn Mandarin Chinese. It's a tough language, trust me. If you've had any exposure at all, it's like a totally different paradigm than what we know in the Western world, right? So if I looked at myself right now, I'm like at level 0 of Mandarin Chinese. So I could say like, you know what? That's not for me. I don't speak Mandarin. I'm not good at languages. So it's just not meant for me. I'm not even gonna learn Mandarin. Or I could take the mentality that over time, with some effort, I could move myself along this continuum from 0 Mandarin. I think I'm flipping it. I'm trying to get to that, right? From 0 Mandarin to more Mandarin. I'm not going to use the word perfect because there's no such thing, right? To more Mandarin. I mean, and nowadays, with apps like Babbel and Duolingo, you guys probably know about these apps, right? They're these little language learning apps. They're designed for 10 minutes a day. So these little baby lessons that take 10 minutes a day. I was doing French last year, and I started French right here, and I was consistent for a few months, and wow, little by little, before you know it, you look around, you look down, like, oh wow, I'm right here with my French, right? And we're going to talk about the 1% rule in just a minute in a few slides, that there's this compounding effect when you stick to a habit and you're willing to let go of perfect. Language is one of those things. I have this theory that 90% of people who say they're not good at languages are just letting their perfectionism block them. Because I have learned languages and become fluent in another language, and I know that the key was to just put myself out there and make tons of mistakes in public with people and just get corrected. Because in that particular case, I was willing to just fail fast, learn. Oh, and that's the best way to learn, by the way, is speak with a native speaker and mess up. Don't worry, they'll let you know. And then you take that feedback, and before you know it, you just have fun with it, right? And I like to imitate soap opera stars when I was learning Spanish. That's how I did it, right? And watching soap operas is a great way to learn language, by the way. Okay, you guys have a little flexibility on time? We got 10 more minutes maybe? Okay. So here's like the official growth mindset statement. So Carol Dweck, I guess, Stanford's the place today, and it's misspelled too. I told you I planned an imperfection in here. Just That's the thing when you're giving a talk on the beauty of imperfect, you can just say like, see, I told you. Okay, sorry about that. So Carol Dweck is considered kind of like the mother of this concept of mindset. And she has had like a major impact in the education world. She wrote a book. I don't know if I listed the book in the references here, but I don't think I posted a picture here. A book called Mindset. And it's this idea that, you know, there's a fixed versus growth mindset. In a fixed mindset, we see our abilities as kind of frozen, and we're kind of paralyzed, thus we are what we are. And with a growth mindset, we have this willingness to kind of move and take risk, and we understand the power of effort, okay? I want to show you, just real quick, I want to talk, this is one of like the landmark studies in the mindset research. I want to talk you through it. Now, this is school context, but don't worry, we're going to kind of extrapolate this out into the real world to get the main lesson and tool from this section, okay? So, all right, so 400 fifth graders, that's a pretty good sample size. They were randomly selected, and then they were given a test. They're fifth graders, right? They were given a super easy test designed for third graders. It was just intentionally designed so that they would all ace it, okay? So they all aced the test, right? But one group, half of them were told, whoa, you know what, Jimmy? You aced this test. You must be so smart. Congratulations. The other 200 were pulled aside and said, whoa, Stacy, you worked really hard on this. Look how that paid off. Look at that results you got. I love how you worked so hard. Okay? That's it. That was the only difference between the two groups. But I want you to watch the repercussions down the line. The power of this language to kind of frame their thinking. Okay? All right. A lot of waiting for just the arrow. Okay. So, down the line, all students were given an option. Okay. This next test is going to be a lot harder, but you're going to learn a lot from it just by taking it. Or you could just take a test of the same level for this next one. It's up to you guys. Okay? And so, filter number one, or test number one here is, okay, the mindset that they have after this, what's it going to lead them to? To take more risk, for the opportunity to learn, or to protect that precious compliment that they got, right? Probably you predicted this in your head. So, okay, the kids who were told that they worked really hard on the first one, 90% of them chose the harder test. 90% of them chose the harder test. Over 50% of those chose the easier test. Okay? So obviously, that was the only difference, one phrase. One phrase shifted these kids' mindset enough that they were willing to take a risk that we know in the long run, you need to take risks to grow and learn, right? So that one simple phrase, it's the power of words and praise. It's not quite done yet though, because a lot of parents will see this part of the research and go like, you know what, but I still want them to get into Stanford. So unless you're going to show me some numbers, this is just foo-foo feel-good stuff, right? So don't worry, there's numbers, okay? So next, all the students were given a 7th grade test. Remember, they're 5th graders. So every student failed. This was a super hard test intentionally, okay? They kind of like throw it out there. But they were observed while they were taking the test. I love this description. The ones who initially were told they were smart, here's that imposter syndrome kicking in, right? Oh my gosh, they're going to discover me. This is so hard. They were sweating, straining, miserable. But the kids who were praised for their effort, okay, they got very involved. They tried multiple solutions. Many even said that the test was their favorite, that it was fun, right? Because it was a different experience for them. Just from that, again, the only difference so far is that one phrase. It's not like these guys were taken aside and given a vitamin smoothie and got an extra nap. They were all in the same situation, but besides that one phrase, okay? Now, we're back to the same, not the exact same test, but the same level test of the original test, a 3rd grade test, 2 grade levels below them, right? This is where you can convince like the skeptical parent about the power of mindset, okay? Okay? So, this is the original test. The average score went down 20% on the same test because they had gone through this psychological strain, right? And that's mindset about performance and achievement. These guys went up by 30%, okay? So what's the point here? In this particular case, I pulled an example from education just to illustrate the impact of words. the power of words to kind of frame. Now, in the context here, we're talking about, ourself. We don't have teachers necessarily giving us praise in that way, but we have tons of self-talk. In fact, I know one person here even names that voice, has that, can I say it? She calls her voice Karen. And when Karen starts talking to her, she can identify like, okay, Karen, I hear you, but, right? So we all have this self-talk chatter. My argument here, the tool I'm going to give you now is, let's control which self-talk we accept. And we know exactly how to frame the talk for kids and in our heads to nurture the growth mindset. And this is just a tool. And this exact graphic is in your workbook, by the way. Okay? And part of your post-processing, one thing I want you to do is think about your self-talk. Think about any self-sabotaging self-talk that you have. Little phrases like this that you find cycling, merry-go-rounding through your head, right? I just can't do math. This is too hard. I'm awesome at this. Or even that, right? Even when you're using positive absolutes, you want to think about how to reframe them, okay? I'm not good at this. It's good enough. And then ideas on this side, on this column, how to reframe them, okay? So that's tool number 3. And these are some shortcuts that I've developed over the years, okay? You can't necessarily memorize that chart, but if you run your self-talk through these 2 filters, you're going to be in good shape with the growth mindset. Number 1, if you can focus on the process over the product. So always ask yourself, am I fixating on some kind of end product? Or am I giving myself feedback on a process or an effort that I'm doing? Okay? Filter number 1. Filter number 2, the pursuit of excellence is what you can use to replace the concept of perfection, right? You're pursuing excellence. It's a process. It's a process that you're growing towards and moving towards, okay? Versus perfection, which is just some kind of like imaginary thing, okay? And I copied those 2 shortcuts into the workbook, right? Are they in there, Kristen? Okay.
Yeah, they're at the top.
Yeah, there they are at the top. Okay, good. Okay, good. We're going to move along. So the 4th and final section is about grit. So grit and mindset kind of go hand in hand. And here we're going to talk about accepting that the road ahead is rough and full of mistakes, but we love it. We love it. We're going to learn to love it. We have to, okay? All right, this is one of my favorite examples of grit. And La Sagrada Familia, if you don't know, is a cathedral in Spain that's been in progress for over 100 years. So the original architect, Antoni Gaudí, died a long time ago, but he wasn't worried. This was his mentality. My client's not in a hurry. For him, his client was God, right? So he's like, he drew up these magnificent plans that were just mind-bogglingly complex and expensive. And so he knew, like, okay, in my lifetime, we're only going to get like a 4th done. It's okay. They'll carry it on. They'll carry it on. So this is an example of someone trying to leave a legacy beyond those 100 years that we talked about before, okay? So this is an example of kind of like an extreme example of grit, knowing that the road ahead is going to be super tough, but you're embracing it and loving it. So the person considered kind of the mother of grit, I call her, is a researcher called Angela Duckworth. She has a great TED Talk called Grit. I recommend checking out. We're not going to go too deep. We're just going to use a few quotes from her to kind of illustrate what we're talking about. Gritty people have a growth mindset. When bad things happen, they don't give up. So here's a direct tie-in to growth mindset that we just talked about, okay? It soon became clear that doing one thing better and better might be more satisfying than staying an amateur at many different things. In other words, when you get to that difficult point, that tension point, that's when the real payoff can come if you have the grit to stay with it. On that continuum that we were talking about, okay? What a lot of us do is we have all these pursuits, but as soon as we get to that tough point, like we go, yeah, I wasn't that interested in that one anyway, so I'm gonna do this one now. That gets tough, then we jump to the next one. The real lesson of grit for me is the reward of when you get to that point, persisting, okay? And that's her definition, sustained passion and perseverance for especially long-term goals, okay? But this is a Benism that I'm gonna add in right here. One thing that I think is missing from some of these models is a lack of emphasis on what's gonna give you that passion, right? So if I'm back to that learning Mandarin scenario, if I get to that really hard point in learning Mandarin, but I'm not feeling pulled by some bigger vision, then I'm just relying on willpower. That's a very finite and temporary resource, okay? So that's why in this workshop we had the Design Your Life workbook, because, where is it? Yeah, that's exactly why this piece is in here, because if you do this first, you have the grit. You have the grit. It's what Tony Robbins calls pull versus push. When you have this grand vision of where you're going, where you want to be, how it's going to feel, how it's going to be structured, all that, then you're being pulled towards something. It's so much easier to have this grit and persevere because you see what's on the other end. But when you don't, when you're just doing it because, like when you set these New Year's resolutions, whatever they might be, I'm going to lose 10 pounds, I'm going to have this habit, I'm going to do this, but they're just coming from like the either, they're not driven by your life purpose, then you hit that point and you're not going to have the grit because you're in push mode, what Tony Robbins calls push mode, and that's willpower. Some of us have willpower and discipline, but it's finite. That's exactly why this is in this workshop. Go through the process of defining your purpose. That will become the gravity, that will become the pull that you can apply the grit, okay? And a cool little lesson from another book I'm reading right now, actually, Atomic Habits by James Clear. He has this cool concept. I connect it directly to grit, and he calls it the compound interest of self-improvement. So there's this thing that we forget, and you can only reap the benefits of this if you have a growth mindset and you're willing to not be perfect, right? But he says, okay, 365, if I improve 1%, that's not much, on any activity a day, over the course of a year, because of compound interest, you have experienced some massive growth in that particular domain. It's not as simple as, it's compound, it's just like the money concept, right? Because the next day's improvement is built on the additional from the previous day. Okay, you get it, okay? And the same thing applies in the negative. So here's what happens, and here's where the grit comes in. He calls this the valley of disappointment, okay? We start a new habit. It's January 1st. Here's the new me. I'm gonna do this. I'm starting this habit. And we have this vision, this expectation of this is how it's gonna be. But here's what really happens, right? It takes some time. It takes some time. We're disappointed. What happens right here for 99% of people? Abandon. I'm done. Re-rationalize it. I didn't want it anyways. Depends on what type of perfectionist you might be or your mindset, right? You reframe it. This is the valley of disappointment. But reframing your thinking, embracing grit, having your gravity pull, you can work through the valley of disappointment and then look where you end up, even better than you imagined. And this is due to this compound interest for self-improvement factor, okay? So if I just stick with Mandarin, if I'm really motivated for the Mandarin because I'm gonna be living in China for a month, and I'm gonna be a featured lecturer at the university, that's a pretty good reason, that's a pretty exciting reason to stick with my Mandarin. If I do push through this valley of disappointment, man, look where I'm gonna end up after just a year, right? That's the power of the atomic habit, okay? It's cool stuff. I get excited about it anyways. Okay, all right, so this is my final tool for you. And this is my invention. I'll just be totally frank with you. It's adapted. So in the school world, we have a version of this that we give to teachers and parents to help kids who are perfectionists get a grip on all the myriad activities that they do throughout the day and put them in context so they know they can have an internal scale or meter about how much effort something should get. Okay, so in the context of a kid, it's like, okay, I always say Jimmy, and that name doesn't even really exist anymore. Okay, Josh, this little homework assignment, these math problems you're doing, is not worth crying at the kitchen table for 2 hours, because just getting your homework done for tomorrow, which is not even for a grade, it's probably a 1 or a 2 on this scale, okay? And so what I've taken is that there's a scale like that we do for teachers and parents, where it's just like a hand, and you train your kids, and you preface an activity or an assignment with this idea. Okay, everybody, okay, class, this is a 3 on our scale, and here's the project, right? So what I've done is I've taken that and I've adapted it in the mold of this internal self-talk and framed it in this context of perfectionism versus excellent. So here's what I'm thinking. Let me know what you think. Like, I use it myself. You're not going to find this in a book necessarily yet, but let me put this out here for you. Okay, so it's a 5-point scale. Now, admittedly, there are things in life that we want done at a very high level. So this isn't to kind of train you to just slack and not care. Caring is great, but when it becomes a form of paralysis is when it's bad and negative, right? So a 5 on this scale is this thing is done when it's excellent, okay? If I'm giving a TED Talk, to the world, to the universe, I'm going to give that a 5. That's pretty high stakes. I want to represent. I want to share my idea effectively. That's important. I'm going to put that a 5, and I'm going to put in those extra hours, okay? But let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Done is excellent. There are some things that just do it. Just pay your utility bill. Just take out the trash. Just do so-and-so, right? These kind of like daily, simple tasks that just done is excellent. Just get them done, right? And if you kind of frame it that way, you're lowering the stress. And there are things in the middle, and there are different grades. The grade that I use is it's done with excellence, right? So I don't have to like hammer it and beat it until it's like in this perfect state. I know my own integrity, and if I put authentic effort into it with my eye on excellence, I want to represent myself, and I know myself that I did it with excellence, then I'm okay. And then I embrace that other design thinking mindset, the lean startup thinking mindset, and I know that, okay, this is my MVP I'm putting out in the world. I'm going to watch it, I'm going to learn from it, and then I'm going to see how I can improve it or pivot. Does that make sense to you guys? Because here's the problem. A lot of us, a lot of perfectionists live way too much up here. My estimation, my prediction is only about 5% of the things we do should be right here. Because this goes back to slide 1. What happens when we live right here? We're in a highly anxious state. All those detrimental health repercussions of perfectionism come because up here we live in our sympathetic nervous system. This is fight or flight mode all the time. It's gotta be perfect, it's gotta be perfect, it's gotta be perfect, right? It just accelerates. And that's where those negative health consequences come from. If we can balance, if we can find a way internally to adjust our self-talk, tool 3, and give ourselves an internal vocabulary to just give ourselves permission to just put things on this scale, then we have some tools to just like balance it. That makes sense? Okay? And that is in your workbook as well. And what I'm suggesting is that you kind of, and this is very subjective too, like a 5 for me might be a 3 for you. It has to do with our values and our long-term goals and what is our pull. What is our pull? For me, what defines a 5, by the way, is what's aligned with my life purpose that I've worked through. Okay? That could be the difference between a 3 or a 4 and a 5 for me. It's like, oh yeah, this is crucial to my life purpose that I've defined. This is my gravity. This is a 5, okay? Whereas other things, if they're not aligned, but I have to do them, they can belong somewhere on this scale. So much less stressful, trust me, okay? One last beautiful metaphor to leave you with, and many of you might be familiar with. Another Japanese concept. They have all these beautiful things related to imperfection, don't they? It's kintsugi. It's this idea that when a vessel or a piece of ceramics breaks, instead of seeing it as imperfect and that it needs to be discarded, there's a very specific process it goes through to be repaired with gold, with molten gold and precious metals. And that becomes a sign of even more beauty. In other words, it's like the perfect exclamation point to this talk, which is the beauty is the imperfection. The imperfection is the beauty, right? It's been used, it's been lived, it's been loved, just like our messy lives. So that's kind of like the metaphor that I want to leave you with. And you guys know me in this happy mug, but you know where to find me too. Okay? All right, guys, I apologize for going over a little bit.